Hi, officially, everyone. It is wonderful to welcome you here today. Let's start with who we are. So, Lecturio is the world's leading most comprehensive, apologies for that, most comprehensive medical education digital platform. And it does contain the entirety of the medical and the nursing curriculum. People often ask me, what does it mean to contain the entire curriculum? And all curricula are different. But if anyone is to get Lecturio for your organization, if you haven't already, you will see that we do curricular mapping, which means your entire curriculum will be present, and there's always a little bit more left in the end. So the content comes from top professors around the globe, really, and all of the videos, all of this content really looks very, very similar to one another in all these videos. So these professors come from these top schools that you see here, but we have professors from all around the globe as well. So apart from medical, as I mentioned, we also have the nursing curricula, and they are really seen on Lecturio through high-end videos. So we have over 12,000 videos that are high quality, they're short, and they're very engaging for the students. They also have learning objectives per video. We have over 9,800 clinical cases, which can be used for case-based learning, but also problem-based learning, as we will see in a little bit. All of these cases come with text and video explanations. There's recall questions, which means you can use them to test your students, or your students can use them to practice for any quizzes. And there's also concept pages that are my personal favorite aspects of the platform that both you and your students can use for flipped classroom, for teaching, for taking notes, and you name it. These concise videos that I already mentioned come in, they cover the medical concepts in depth, and all of the videos really fluctuate between 3 and 9 minutes. I think most of them are not at the 9 minute point because, as you know, our attention span, especially in time of platforms like TikTok, is not that long. So the videos are concise, they're straight to the point, they dive into one topic, and they all have linked recall questions for formative assessment that are later also connected to spaced repetition. There's also 3D anatomy maps, and this is something that I completely would have used a lot if I had it when I was a medical student some time ago. And they have around 400 pre-mapped views that the students can use to learn more. There's also videos that cover clinical skills for both medical and nursing that ultimately all those students will have to practice at the bedside. It is good for them to be fully ready and fully prepared to do these to practice these skills. And there's comprehensive coverage of clinical skills as well of in a similar way like the ones before. The clinical cases are real life clinical scenarios that have been formed by different physicians, different nurses, and different individuals that practice medicine. There's automated feedback, there's linked videos, and used for self-directed learning or exams. We also have acquired the Healer platform, which does have even more organized or more comprehensive, more in-depth cases that you can use for your students and for your faculty. There's detailed learning paths that are pre-programmed where you can combine videos, Cube blocks, and there's adaptive review within each path, which means depending on how well the student is doing, the next part of the learning path adjusts or accommodates depending on how well the student is doing for this learning path. And we're always on the lookout for creating even more learning paths that you as faculty could request. And they can be for USMLE Step 1, 2, NP, different types of exams, but they can also be per subject area. Now, the concept pages that I already mentioned all look in a similar way like this. They have the videos linked, they have the photos around, and they can be printed, which, we don't encourage printing to save the environment, but if that's anyone's cup of tea, there is a possibility for them to be printed for taking notes, and they all contain references so that you can see when was the last time they were updated, and they get updated fairly often. This Lecturio as a learning platform has precision health science teaching embedded, and it has the personalized smart tutor for students that students can use so that you save time as faculty. And for faculty, there's the digital teaching assistant, which will give you statistics on your students, on the groups of students. It can go per subject area, per class, or it can even go and you can see which students are at risk from really failing that class or maybe falling behind. As I mentioned, for faculty, the Life Faculty Dashboard gives you all of the information that I previously mentioned, and you can really follow the mastery level for students. And when you have something automated that does this for you, it does save a lot of time, and it doesn't allow for students to really fall through the cracks. It also saves you energy, doesn't it? You can look at assignment stats. So if you assign different videos or different questions for students, question banks for them to go through, you can really look at the statistics and see how well your students are doing and in what way. And this is how your teaching dashboard can look like, and you can produce statistics, as you can see, with date range per student, per group, per user, per course. Now, if you're already using something, I think a lot of people have different form of Canvas. A lot of people use Zoom or Microsoft Teams or even Power BI. This can be easily integrated with your existing setup, so you really don't need to toss what you're already using away to accommodate Lecturio, but our Lecturio can be accommodated with everything else, including softwares like Proctorio, for example. So I will try to not stay too long in the part of what is problem-based learning, but let's see what we have on the slide. So this is a pedagogical approach, like many other pedagogical approaches we use in health professions education, that enables students to learn while actively engaging with meaningful problems we have given students to work on. Now, as many pedagogical approaches, problem-based learning is evidence-based. It is not the most perfect model that you can use, the most perfect approach, but it is a approach. Also, I would just say we can use this for shameless promotion. Back in November of 2024, I did a webinar on evidence-based learning strategies. So in case you want to see it, it is available on our media platforms. I'm sure we can share a link if anyone is interested. Problem-based learning is only mentioned there. We don't dive deep into that, but today we will just talk about this in particular. Now, when you see this definition here, this is not a comprehensive definition because it doesn't really give you even the beginning and the gist of it. As it was said in the chat, this is a learning strategy where, apart from students getting knowledge about the particular clinical setting that they're learning in. So they're not just talking about the case, they are learning how to collaborate together, how to learn as a team, how to be sustainable in their learning and finding answers to their problems. And it is a strategy in small groups that allows for faculty to really see students how they learn in a self-directed fashion, in a self-directed but also manner where they collaborate with one another. So it's collaborative. This is well established, and when you see the reference here, it comes from 1992. So this is hardly a new concept in education, but it still has new aspects of it added continuously. But it's also something that people just also find out about. And when you see the reference in 1992, I was born in 1992, so you can see that this is not that new, right? So it's well established and it could be used across the entire continuum of learners. And you can use it for undergraduate, and I have used it for both preclinical and clinical students. You can use it for postgraduate students where the problems become a little more complex. Then you can use it as part of continuing medical education, which is also doable. And I already saw that Aaron shared the webinar that I talked about in questions, so you can find it in the chat. Thank you, Aaron, so much. Now, with problem-based learning, as facilitators, as faculty members, we facilitate learning that is all four of these things. And the first is constructive. Constructive means that when students are approaching solving a certain problem, and the problem is not just the beginning of this learning, but it comes back in different forms throughout, they have to construct or they have to build on previous knowledge that they have. And this is why defining the problem in problem-based learning is the most important aspect of using this pedagogical approach, because students have to construct on something that they already know and something that they already possess. Which means if these are students that are just about starting, they still have certain knowledge, but we have to make sure that the problem they're constructing on, the problem they're learning on, can really fall back into the modest knowledge that they have at the beginning of their studies. Then problem-based learning has to be contextual. And when we say contextual is, it has to do one of two things. First, it has to be very meaningful and relevant for the students and for where they're learning, right? We have to take it for students that are at a certain level, students that learn a certain class, or maybe students that are in certain part of their education. But contextual means that problem-based learning as a strategy also needs to be socially accountable. So if you're teaching medicine in a certain area of the world, being socially accountable means that the problems you're using are not just recycled problems from a different area of the world, but are rather problems that you've created and that are very contextual for the students about the environment and the community where they will practice and the communities they will serve. Three, needs to be collective. And I think that this is the key aspect of problem-based learning. Having collectivist mindset when students are learning, just like on that picture on the right, our right, students need to collaborate and collectively try to solve the problem because this teaches students how in the future they need to collaborate with different individuals within the healthcare context and individuals that have different backgrounds than themselves. And producing a problem where you have made all these students solve it together and everyone having to do certain aspect to solve it is a pretty good simulation, high fidelity simulation of what real life should look like in healthcare settings. Um, and finally, we have the self-directed. And the self-directed means that you're not sort of micromanaging or leading the students in their own learning, but rather you're allowing students to do their own research. You're allowing students to learn at their own pace and to try to find the answers in a way. And the self-directed aspect is key because we constantly talk about lifelong learning in healthcare, right? People need to learn their entire lives, especially because something new comes around the corner all the time. So the self-directed means that students will also learn in a very sustainable way. So problem-based learning can be an incredibly, incredibly powerful tool for teaching and learning for students. And although it's not the most perfect tool, it is one of those tools that allow you to teach your students things far beyond just the curriculum, far beyond just the clinical skills, and far beyond just the medical cases. So as I said, even though it's not the most perfect or the only tool that can be used for this, it is definitely one of the only ones that pays such an in-depth attention to teamwork, to communication, and that can has the ability to take your students on the next level. Now, before we wrap up this webinar, I would like to thank each and every single one of you for joining us today. If you do want to request a demo that's specific to your institution and to see how Lecturio can fit with your own institution's needs, please do scan the QR code or just send us an email and request a demo, and one of our team members will make sure to get back to you. Thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your day, morning, or evening.